Onwards and upwards with a discussion about how to account for bonds issued at a premium. Why would a company issue bonds at a premium? Let's consider Adidas. Assume that Adidas issues bonds with a $100,000 par value, a 12% annual contract rate, semi-annual interest payments, and a 2-year life. Also assume that the market rate for Adidas bonds is 10% on the issue date. The contract rate of 12% is higher than the market rate of 10%. Remember that the market rate is the rate demanded for other investments with similar risk. Everyone wants these Adidas bonds because they promise a higher semi-annual payment than other similar investments. Because Adidas will pay the investors more than market, it wants more money up front. So the bonds are sold at a premium, which is a price higher than the par value. Pause for a moment to calculate the amount of money Adidas will receive for these bonds. In this example, Adidas sells the bonds for 103.546, which implies 103.546% of the par value. Come up with the issue price, and we'll come back to the amount of cash received in the moment. These bonds obligate the issuer to pay out two separate future cash flows: the par value of $100,000 in cash at the end of 2 years of life, and cash interest payments of $6,000 at the end of each semi-annual period during the bond's 2-year life. How much did you decide Adidas will receive in cash? You should have calculated $103,546. If not, try again. This is an important calculation that you should learn before you take a quiz or an exam. The difference between the par value of the bonds and the cash price received is the premium we charge the bond investors. Remember, the whole reason we could offer the premium is because of the difference between the stated rate and the market rate of interest. As a result, the premium represents a reduction in the interest expense recorded over the life of the bond. Amortizing the premium will decrease the total interest expense recorded for the bond to be equal to 10%, which is the market rate of interest. It's pretty cool how the market knows how to adjust bond pricing for interest rates. Try to keep the big picture in mind as you think about the details of recording these transactions. On the issue date, Adidas will debit cash for the amount of cash proceeds, credit bonds payable for the par value of the bonds issued, and credit premium on bonds payable for the difference between the two. The premium on bonds payable is an adjunct liability or accretion account and has a normal credit balance. Always keep it next to bonds payable. Think of them as being married and always being next to each other. The T accounts illustrate how bonds payable and how the premium on bonds payable account would look immediately after the issuance of the bond. How much, then, is the carrying value of the bonds as of December 31st? Pause for a moment and write what you think in your notes. The carrying value of the bonds is $103,546. On the balance sheet, the premium account is added to the par value of the bonds to arrive at the current carrying value of the bonds. A good way to remember the number is to see that the carrying value of the bonds at the issue date is equal to the cash received at issue. Now, this is only true at the date of issue. As the bond premium is amortized, the carrying value decreases to the par value. For a moment, let's consider how much total interest expense Adidas will incur as a cost of its borrowing. We looked at this calculation previously for the company that issued bonds at a discount. Adidas receives $103,546 for its bonds. In return, it must pay bondholders only $100,000 after 2 years plus semi-annual interest payments of $6,000 each for a total of $124,000. Notice that the $3,546 premium reduces what is repaid to the bondholders at maturity and reduces the cost of using the $103,546 for 2 years. The calculation shown on this slide shows that total bond interest over 2 years is $20,454. It can be calculated 2 ways. The easiest way to think about it is as follows. Total interest expense is the difference between the total amount repaid to the bondholders, or $124,000, and the total amount borrowed from the bondholders of $103,546. Alternately, we can compute the total bond interest as the sum of the 4 interest payments less the bond discount. This alternative computation is shown in the lower portion of the slide. What amount of interest expense is recorded when the semi-annual payment is made then? Simply divide $20,454 in total interest expense by 4 payment periods to get $5,113. We already discussed how to amortize a discount or premium using the straight line method. To apply the straight line method to Adidas's bonds, we divide the total bond interest expense of $20,454 by 4, the number of semi-annual periods in the bond's life. This gives us a bond interest expense of $5,113 each period, rounded. Alternately, we can find this number by dividing the $3,546 premium by 4, which yields $887 worth of premium to be amortized each interest period. When the $887 is subtracted from the $6,000 cash payment, the bond interest expense for each period is $5,113. Cash is credited for $6,000, the actual amount of cash interest paid to the bondholders, and printed on the bond contract. The debit of $887 to the premium on bonds payable account is determined using the straight line method we just discussed, and the debit to bond interest expense is the amount of cash paid less the bond premium amortization. Because we've received more cash than par when the bonds were issued at a premium, our ultimate cost of borrowing is lower. The premium effectively reduces our interest expense to the market rate at the date of issue, 10%. This amortization table illustrates the interest expense, the interest payment, premium amortization, unamortized premium balance, and the carrying value of the bond for each interest payment period over the life of the bond. Notice that although Adidas actually pays $24,000 in total contract interest to the bondholders, actual interest expense is only $20,454. The following points summarize straight-line amortization of the premium bonds. At issue, the $100,000 par value plus the $3,546 premium equals the $103,546 cash received by the issuer. During the bond's life, the unamortized premium decreases each period by the $887 amortization, and the carrying value decreases each period by the same $887. At maturity, the unamortized premium equals 0, and the carrying value equals the $100,000 par value that the issuer pays the holder. So take a break, and when you come back, we'll learn how to retire or pay off bonds.